So let's get into why I want to know what HA is going to say. So in 2016, I was a pretty hardcore Bernie Sanders supporter. But mindset at the time, again, I was a Obama supporter for his whole presidency at the time. That's a whole separate conversation. 2016, hardcore Bernie supporter, but I was willing to accept Hillary as a second choice. That's where I was at the time. But, or should I say, however, when Dirty Debbie and her DNC cronies were exposed for rigging the primary, I had a major WTF moment. At that time, I wasn't on Twitter. I barely watched YouTube. But somehow I came across a video by this guy who calls himself H.A. Goodman. And he very articulately skewered the DNC for what Noam Chomsky would later refer to as their shenanigans. So Mr. Goodman was my first YouTube subscription, and I followed his podcast closely. And I remember him saying there were only three Democrats, that the only three Democrats he trusted were Bernie Sanders, Nina Turner, and someone I had never heard of named Tulsi Gabbard. And we all know where that leads, and that's to very, very good places. Anyway, a couple of 2 weeks ago, my last podcast, I was showing a clip from Trey Gowdy at a House Oversight Committee hearing dealing with the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe fiasco, when OG citizen of the Blatherverse, Kameshwari Kate, mentioned that H.A. Goodman was following those hearings closely day by day. And as a matter of fact, I was following H.A. Goodman closely day by day, and I wondered at the time, because if you remember, and Kate, let me know if you agree, H.A. Goodman started out as a big-time Bernie supporter and ended up being a Trump supporter. And I wondered, what a journey that is. How do you go from supporting Bernie Sanders to supporting Donald Trump? And he did it in just a couple of months. It took me many, many years to go from supporting Bernie to voting for Trump. And yes, Trump's presidency has not been perfect. I have my criticism of him, but I do not regret my vote because the alternative was absolutely impossible. And yes, so that was 2 weeks ago on the podcast. And yeah, so like I say, somewhere along the line that H.A. he didn't go right from Bernie supporter to Trump supporter. He went from Bernie supporter to Jill Stein, who he always would use the word doctor. He'd call her, I'm voting for Dr. Jill Stein, which is, by the way, what I ended up doing that year. I couldn't fathom voting for Trump in 2016. And when he became a Trump supporter, I assumed he'd gone bonkers, and I stopped tuning in. I couldn't understand how someone who supported Bernie could possibly support Trump. But in any case, I tuned out. And although by the time I tuned out, I was quite aware of just how awful the Democrat elite had become. I voted for, like I just said, I voted for Jill Stein in 2016, still feeling it was unfathomable to vote for Trump. But long story short, I did indeed vote for him in 2020 and 2024. Anyway, I'm planning to reach out to H.A. Goodman because I would like to hear him articulate his rather swift transition from Bernie to Donald, and I'm particularly interested in how much blowback he received in the process. Personally, I have gotten layer and layers of blowback to this day. And hey, I'll be the first to say Donald's presidency has had its flaws. I think ICE is throwing out some babies with the bathwater. I'm all for deporting the ones who stormed the gates for the past 4 years. But I think we need to give the people who have actually contributed to society a path to resolution. I think Doge is a great concept, but there's also being babies dumped with the bathwater, like questionable defunding of national parks. But they've also been great in terms of exposing absurd waste. So great concept with Doge. Execution could be better. But I do not regret my vote because the alternative was unthinkable.
I couldn't reconcile it. Now I can.